Welcome, everybody. Happy day before Thanksgiving. We'll wait a few minutes before starting, but in the meantime, if you have a piece of paper and a marker, great. If you don't have a piece of paper and a marker nearby, go get some because you'll need it today for the workshop.
Unlined paper, if possible.
Unlined paper, okay. And if you're able to keep your camera on, we would love to see you, but we also understand that you may not be able to, or you're in the kitchen and you're just cooking and you just can't be on camera. We get it. But if you can have your camera on, we'd love to see you all. Okay. Welcome to Thanks for the Love and Stuff, an intergenerational holiday gathering at Reimagine. My name is Andy Engel. I'm senior programmer at Reimagine. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a white cisgender male. I've got glasses. I got salt and pepper hair. I'm wearing this nice white, cozy, fluffy, fleecy shirt because it's a little chilly today. I've got an orange background. Welcome, everybody. This month, we're presenting programs on Wednesdays that focus on the theme of values, wishes, and intentions. It's creative people like Judith Helfand, today's workshop leader, who help us appreciate that planning is in fact a toolkit for self-knowledge, for agency, and empowerment. And we all know it's scary to plan about end-of-life matters, about caregiving. And it's scary to have conversations with your loved one about the stuff, which we'll learn about. But ultimately, all of this is a shield against anxiety and fear. So far, in this month's three-part series, we have learned about building community-based care teams for the dying. And that recording of that event is in our library, and I'll share a link later. Next week, we'll host a table talk with strategies to avoid missed opportunities for end-of-life planning among underrepresented communities. So I hope you'll join us for that. Maybe Lily, if you can paste the link in the chat, if you haven't done so already, that would be great. And you can register for those events using the link. As some of you may know, we at Reimagine have been leaning into the theory and practice of what's known as post-traumatic growth, PTG. And that's the sciencey name to describe the struggles we experience with grief, with loss, with adversity, the hard stuff. And then we use that experience to spark discoveries about ourselves and our communities. And by the way, this concept of PTG, it's not unique to Western science. You can find it in all sorts of global traditions. And we'll be exploring, in particular, the indigenous concept of Nepantla, which is the in-between space for transformation next month. So please check that out. PTG is rooted in psychological research. Those who experience adversity and loss can also experience strength, optimism, more meaningful relationships, a deeper appreciation of life, and heightened spirituality and purpose. And at the same time, it's my belief that it's perfectly acceptable to not grow at all when you're experiencing loss, when you're experiencing a tragedy. That's quite normal. Now, let's see. These are all the programs that are coming up this month. Check them out. The majority of us are zooming in from the United States, also known as Turtle Island by Native Americans and their allies. Judith and I are in Lenapehoking, where a large city called New York is located on occupied land. I ask you to join me in acknowledging Indigenous communities in North America, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. I'm stating this because it's a step to continue the process of dismantling the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism and white supremacy. We're all interested in knowing where you are, and if you haven't already, please paste in the chat where you're located. There's a very helpful map called native-land.ca. And you can check that out and learn about the locations of Indigenous people, past, present, and future. For those who wish, there is the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you'll get a live transcript if you click on that. Feel free to send me a note in the chat. If you have technical issues, I might be able to help you. So now I'm going to stop this. Great. I want everyone to know that everyone who has registered for this event, you'll receive a follow-up email with a recording. And we'll figure this out, but some of these elements may not be shared, so we'll see. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend, Judith Helfand. Judith is a Peabody Award-winning filmmaker. She's a pioneer in bringing her whole self to her filmmaking. She's unafraid to reveal the truth, whether that's about herself or the corruption and injustices of this world. In the film Love and Stuff, which you can stream on PBS, the full-length version, she delves into deep grief and parenting. 3 of her award-winning films made their world premieres at Sundance, and all have been nationally broadcast on PBS, HBO, and the Sundance Channel. Judith is the co-founder of Working Films, a nonprofit organization dedicated to using nonfiction storytelling to increase civic engagement and promote environmental and racial justice at the local, state, and national levels. In 2005, she co-founded Chicken and Egg Pictures, which was intended to support women, non-binary, and gender non-conforming documentary filmmakers at critical stages in their careers. Judith is a gifted artist. She's a wonderful mentor. She's a field builder, and she's my friend. She's a mensch also. But before I hand this over to Judith, I want to give a special thanks to the wonderful Lily Donnell, who is here with us from Red Owl Partners. I also want to thank Eliza Licht, also from Red Owl Partners. They are Judith's community engagement team for Love and Stuff, and it's been a pleasure to work with them. So thank you. Judith.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. And to be totally transparent, each time I do this, it's kind of a new workshop. And so we have a structure, we have ideas, we have a time limit, we have a time frame, but we're going to build it together. So thank you very much for being open to participating. And okay. So the first thing that I would really like to do is ask you to think about, just so we get a little sense of like where you're from. You know, obviously you might be from an organization, you're from your life, you represent your family, you're here, right? You know, if you got to reimagine, you have a story that led you to this space. But you're also on a continuum of sorts. And so we're going to throw something into the chat, which I'm going to call, which I am calling sort of the on the road to life, living a good death, having really good grief, a wonderful period of mourning, or helping somebody get there, right? So given that scenario, where might you be on this good death, good grief, good mourning continuum? Where do you fall? So it could be that you need to have that talk about end of life and what it will mean to live a good death. You could be in this period of COVID, because of COVID, you could have been robbed of all of that in multiple ways. You could be in grief right now. You could be dreading the grief that didn't happen, but you know it's going to. And you could be smack in the middle of caring for someone at a critical stage in their life. You could be a worried adult child. You could be a worried grandkid. You could be a frustrated elder with too much stuff and children who are in total denial. You could be a bereavement group leader. You could be a bereavement group member. You could be about to go home for the holidays, wherever home is, and it might be really stressful. So, if you could think about where you are in that space, and if you have that white piece of paper and a marker, if you could write it down and then hold it up, and then we're just gonna all know like where we are. I mean, you could put it in the chat too, but I just think it'd be it's a good visual. I'm a pretty visual person. Wow. Okay. And thank you. So I see people are putting it in the chat and it's beautiful, but if it's possible, ooh, let's see. I think if you have one of those backgrounds that make everything look romantic, then it's going to be fuzzy. Okay. Middle-aged and too much stuff. I work in a funeral home as a funeral celebrant. And so you deal with grief with everybody. You need to talk with extended family about end of life in your 70s, or wear alive hopeful. Thank you, Karen. I'm in a good place with my grief after losing my mom. I'm sorry. And helping others with their losses as a grief coach. So beautiful.
Edith, Robin turned off her filter. You can read it now.
Oh, Robin, I can't, where Robin? Oh, I
Death
know.
Doula.
Oh, Death Doula. Wow. Okay. Currently in grief. My mom died. Oh, Cal, thank you for being here. Okay. So we're all in different places on this path. I'm hoping that there's no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to utilizing the stuff of your loved one's life to do a stuff review and to be helpful along this way. So there's many options, and I'm going to try to give you a few of them. But to do that, and our way in, I'm going to show you a 10-minute short film, which is what brought me here. And by here, I mean what brought me to being on this end of my mother's death. She died in 2013, and being surrounded by, her stuff in ways that I never imagined I would be, and in ways that are really, really, really useful, as useful as making the movie that I'm about to show you. I just to tell you, the name of this short film is Love and Stuff. It's a 10-minute short that was that I did specifically for the New York Times. They have a beautiful series for independent filmmakers called OpDoc. It started literally, I picked up my cell phone on the drive home from the last meeting with my mom's oncologist, where the oncologist, where the oncologist, sat with my mom and me and one of my brothers and basically said, there are no more options. There's no more chemo that's going to really help you, unless you want to try this one really, really, really experimental drug. And you could probably have a really crummy 6, 7, 8 weeks, or you could just stop and go home and be with your family and be really comfortable. And luckily, that's what my mom chose, and that's what we did. And so our choice was, there was no choice except turn the apartment into the warmest, sweetest hospice imaginable, which, as we all know, in this moment, at this period of COVID, was an incredible privilege and a gift, and I'll cherish it my whole life. And that's what we strive to do, and you'll see some of that in the film. The film actually launched on Mother's Day in 2014. That was really intentional. I thought, oh no, it's going to be my first motherless Mother's Day. What am I going to do? Oh, I know. I'll make a movie, and then I'll have a deadline, and then maybe I could do that. Then it'll be like a different kind of thing. Okay, that's what I'll do. Little did I know that I would adopt a baby between now and then, and I would be a mother on Mother's Day. So my goal was, I wanted this film to serve as an invitation for people to observe and imagine the unimaginable, because until I was literally in the hospice with my mom and constructing the hospice and being one of her caregivers, I could never have imagined it. I couldn't even allow myself. I had no context. I couldn't do it. And I also knew that that I was stepping into a rite of passage that was going to connect me with millions of people, past, present, and future. And that I could either consciously step into this space between life with my mother and life without her, which was the thing I could not imagine, or I could not. And the way for me to be consciously stepping in was with a camera. And so it's a real gift that my mother gave me to let me do that. And it's a real gift that we get to give this to you. So this is the up dog. Love and stuff. So I think that what we've decided to do, is that what we're gonna do? We're gonna give them the link, Lily? Okay, you could talk, you could get, okay, so what we've
Yeah,
decided
I'm
to
dropping
do.
the link in
Okay,
the
so
chat
what we've
right now.
decided to do was, rather than us screen it for you and run the risk of it getting jiggy or these great things coming and it not being great, that we're gonna give you the link to the New York Times. So what I'm gonna ask you to do is just turn off your camera, mute yourself for sure, watch it, and promise to come back in 10 minutes, okay? Do not pass go, come back. Okay, okay, great. On September 17th, 2013, my 84-year-old mother died in her apartment turned home hospice just outside New York City, leaving me and my brothers with a lot of stuff to go through. Generations of stuff. Oy, what size shoe are you? I could be wrong. I think it's baby teeth. It's baby teeth. Those are all my grandfather's brothers. I mean, there's like a Harry and a Sam and a Solomon. I don't know. Wysocki and Leitzman and Pinsky. I mean, they're just the greatest names. See, this is why I need my mother. She just kept saying, you know, for the last 2 years, there's so many things I want to show you. Just come and take the time and we'll go through all the stuff. You know, and I'm just, it's like if I just had, then this would be so much sweeter. No, I want my feet up. Here, it's this. For 2.5 years, my mother lived with stage 4 colon cancer. What is that doing?
Just turning wheels.
She managed it so well, we started to think Mom could endure highly toxic outpatient drip chemotherapy every 2 to 3 weeks for years. Keep to point at it? Throughout this time, she repeatedly asked me to go through all the stuff in the apartment with her. But I couldn't. Because deep down, I'd come to believe that if I kept putting it off, she'd live longer. Your feet are going up? By the time I was ready to go through my mom's stuff, we'd run out of time. And I was busy with her daily morphine regimen and transforming the apartment into Shea Helfand Hospice. During Rosh Hashanah, no less. In front of our very eyes, my mother started to let go. One person and one daily ritual at a time. Until all she had to let go of were her children and her breath. After she died, my two brothers and I had just a matter of weeks to break down her 3-bedroom apartment. We were charged with sorting all of it into discrete piles. Give away, donate, recycle, toss. Too painful to go through, precious memories to look at later, and my favorite, keep. My oldest brother, Alex, had razor-sharp clarity, was focused on the task at hand, and knew exactly what he wanted. Our brother, David, who lives 3,000 miles away in Oregon, took a single photograph and a conch shell. Green label means it goes home with Judy. It's a green label, you know, which I know that she wore this to some like weddings or bar mitzvahs, and I don't really wanna, I'm not gonna wear this. And I don't want to give it to anybody, and I want to keep it. It's so ridiculous. I have no room. I have no room. I don't know if I should laugh or cry. It's like she's not in the skirt. And then there were the last things she had touched and used. Her $7,000 handmade bridge. Her eyeglasses, blush brush, toothbrush, gum pick, nail file, and her favorite lipstick. Though I could easily see them in the toss pile, filed under icky, spooky, gross, and used, to my mind they still held traces of Mom's DNA, and it was precisely the momishness of them that made it impossible for me to throw them away. Kind of like her gloves. And her shoes, the ones she loved to buy again and again. The ones she forgot she already had. I wanted to know why those and when those. What season, reason, sale, and store. And when did you stop wearing heels? Had I known how much fun this could have been, I wouldn't have put it off at all. And I would have told my mother how much I loved falling asleep to the sound of her mahjong ladies moving the tiles around with their lacquered nails as they called out, 2 bam, 3 crack. And then there was the stuff that belonged to my father, who had died 7 years earlier, stuff that my mother couldn't part with. Like the wooden cane used by my grandpa, his dad, who died in 1968, which my dad couldn't give away, and then got old enough to use himself. And then there were the elephants in the room. Years and years of elephants, each one uniquely tied to a relative or friend who thought the Hellfans, which in Yiddish means elephant, needed just one more. And my mother loved all of them. And finally, there was the dining room table itself, where every life cycle event and important family conversation that I could remember had taken place. Including one of our last, where as a family, we decided to stop Mom's treatment so she could live a really good death. My mother told us exactly where she wanted this table to go. To the antique store she volunteered at and found solace in after my dad had passed away. The mere idea that her affordable oak table was now considered an antique delighted her. And all the proceeds would go to the hospital that had cared for my father. And that's what made letting it go okay. Back in my already cramped New York City apartment, I held my breath.
has 53 boxes, 1 dry sink, 1 upholstered love seat, my mother's prized mahjong set, and the piano she learned to play at 65 moved in. And that's when I caught myself thinking, I should check in with my mother.
Just tell me something. How do you live without your mother? You do. You learn to.
So I want to share a few things, and then I want to move us to another place. Though we could all talk about this, just this, for a long time, and it would be a beautiful thing just to do that. But you know, as you said, like, why didn't I take the time? Why didn't I do that? I thought I had the time. Well, I had time, right? My mom lived for 2.5 years after her diagnosis, and she was doing really, she did great. She was very aware and cognizant, and she was completely with it. And it was just me who just didn't, I didn't want to have those conversations. So I didn't want to go through stuff, because for me, I thought I'm just going to hasten this process. So I wasn't thinking, and I didn't take her up on it, but it was an amazing gift that she was trying to offer me. So when did I realize that? Oh, so what 2 things. I just want to share that the response that I got from people, like you just said, people that I don't know them, but we're all sort of in this together. I'll share 2 little like handwritten notes.
Judith, do you want me to share the screen now?
Yeah, share the screen, and you'll see, like one person said, whenever I hear, now your OpDoc is my go-to. Whenever I hear that somebody's parent is ill, or worse, they've died, I send them my love and your love and stuff, because it's sort of like, watch this movie and call me in the morning, and then we could talk about stuff together. And then someone else named Michelle, she said, I never would have thought to do this had I not seen Love and Stuff. I went to my mother's for 4 days, and we spent it deep in stuff. Memories, sadness, weirdness, and closeness. We now know what every single thing means. Michelle. Boy, Michelle is very lucky that she got to do that. And I feel so grateful to my mother, because that's, I didn't quite get that time with her in the way that that she was offering it to me, but Michelle got to. And I think that being able to turn a precautionary tale, or a cautionary tale into an active act of time spent well is really a beautiful thing. So that's really what brought me to this idea of, like, how do we take the idea of the stuff review, and how can I offer it to people while they have the time to do it? Or maybe they don't have that time, but they do have the stuff. Maybe there's another way to back end into this, or maybe their family is in great health, but they have to downsize. How do you use that moment, which is often really sad for a lot of people? So I just want to say, these are things that I imagine that I would have done had I had the time, but so I'm offering them to you. So when did I realize that I really missed out? It was while we were shooting and we were putting together the stuff, and it started to get like fun. And if it was fun to shoot, it probably would have been fun to do it with my mother if she had been living. And as I put those things out, I could hear the narration, and it was when I could hear the ladies with their lacquered fingernails going 2 bam, 3 crack, at one side of the house, when I was supposed to be sleeping. And it was all there inside my mother's mahjong set. I thought, oh my goodness, that would have been fun. We would have laughed. She would have told me that one. She did that one, didn't like her tiles because you could see through them, and she would bring her own tiles. And so really the tiles that I have are the tiles that the ladies in Merrick did not trust. So, those are tiny little specifics that just, make you gale and laughter together. I think if I had said, yes, mom, you know what, why don't, I'm gonna come every other week, okay? And let's, hey, I have an idea. How about you show me one of your favorite pots every time I come, and you teach me one recipe each time, and then that's how we can go through the stuff in the kitchen. So we won't be that organized in the kitchen, but like, let's do that. And I have no doubt that, I would have learned how to make a good brisket, and it would have been really pretty amazing. So, in retrospect, it's like, I know that if we had done this, then my mother would have told me again. This is the one story that I do know about my grandfather, my dad's dad, buying live fish and bringing them home to their tenement apartment and letting the fish swim in the bathtub for a week before he clubbed it over their head and killed it so my grandmother could make gefilte fish for Pesach. And my father was constantly in shock because the fish had become his friend. And like this, which we now make mashed potatoes with, holds that story, right? Or, I kept this because I did know the story of my mother's egg slicer, which she only used on Passover, right? And so now my daughter, who I adopted after my mother died, like she sort of knows these stories because luckily I had a few of them, and those were the ones that I kept, because it's hard. You can't keep the whole kitchen, but you could keep the things that have the stories. So keep in mind, if your loved one is alive, or if others are alive, not that specific loved one, but you saved some of the stuff, this could be an opportunity, a way for you to engage with them and even re-engage with the stuff that you thought is missing the story. Maybe it isn't. And maybe somehow, the egg slicer holds something very dear to it. So let's turn my missed opportunity with my mother into an active dynamic gift from Florence to you and your loved ones. And I'm going to give you a couple of options for how to think about what you might be able to do. I have a few ideas. And Lily's going to put some of these in the chat just so you can see them, but I'm going to talk them out. So if they have already passed, but you've kept stuff, now, some of it you might really know where it is. Others might be stored somewhere because you just can't face it yet. So think about, where is that storage facility, or where in the house, in your house that you live in, or your apartment, or your brother's house, like where's that stuff right now? Is it in a box that says too hard to go through it later, precious memories? We have one of those boxes still. Okay, so that might be, if it's Thanksgiving, maybe you're going to be with the chosen family. Maybe you'll be near that box. Maybe it's a good opportunity to take it out and see what's inside and do it with somebody. Okay, so that, just bear in mind, does that exist in your life? Is there something there? Did you keep stuff or an object because you know the story? Or you wish you did. And maybe you can make a list of some of these objects where I know this story and I have to make sure that I use this actively. I make mashed potatoes, maybe instead of killing a fish. And while I'm making the mashed potatoes with my kid, I tell her the story of the carp in the bathtub. And I imbue this thing actively with a story from my parents who my kid has never met. But I could make a list, and I would wind up writing down a very embellished story, and I would have that. So, or did you keep stuff and you don't know what it is, but someone in your life might? Could you figure out, here are the 5 objects that I want to bring out back into the world, even if I just share it with all of my cousins, or I go to that great aunt who I've never really spoken with, and maybe she knows something. So think about that. Maybe that's where you fall in. Okay, if your family member is living, or your loved one is living, or you're working with someone who's alive and they have family members that you're working with, think about an object that holds details or specifics, that holds clues or keys to your family, to your relationship with the family, to your parents or grandparents' relationship to that family. And somehow, if you knew that, things would be different. So for one moment, I just want Lily or Andy, if you could put up that slide of all those brothers. So that's you know, my grandfather had all these brothers. My grandfather helped bring all of those guys over from Bobroysk, which is in Belarus, over, you know, to the United States. They all slept on the living room or on a couch or in the kitchen or something like that for a little while in my grandfather and my grandmother's house. And then they went off to make their fortunes and they all got married. And for some reason, you know, like, I don't understand why, but I don't know that side of the family. Like, we don't really know where they are. If not for the Opdoc, it turned out that the son of one of those guys lived down the street from me for the last 20 years. And I met him only because this Opdoc was out in the world. But why didn't they, what happened with my grandmother that she made it so difficult for my grandpa to stay in touch with these brothers who now must have hundreds of children who are my relatives, and I don't know. And I really need to know, and I won't find out, but I could have. That's why you do it. Or so think about this living person and think about a couple of things that you know that exist, or that you could say, let's go through the photographs and let's find the ones that have nothing on them because we need to know who they are and what will happen. Or you could, you know, you're kidding me. You kept the list of all of the people that you invited to your wedding in 1949. Now, if I had gone through that list with my mother and I had a Brooklyn map, I could have gone to see all of the places where my relatives lived. I could have seen I would have learned so much stuff. I was so surprised that my mother even kept her packing list for her honeymoon. I mean, she was 19 years old when she got married. So think about, are there some of those things, or could you ask, and could you find 5 of them? And what would you ask? What would be the questions that you would ask if you were going to do that? And lastly, and I want you to think about these things: unlock, unleash, unfetter wisdom at a moment when our loved ones actually really want to offer it, or we are in a much better position to need it and be open to it. When we were teens, maybe we couldn't do that. So if anything else, if nothing else, if the object helps you hear the voice of your loved one and even conjure up a tiny fragment, little tidbit of a story that you once heard, that's generative. That's a gift. That's detail that you might not have otherwise. And I still think that that's really useful. And that's your stuff review. One last option is, okay, now I'm going to show you this picture. And I said, she's not in the skirt. She's not in the skirt. And I held it up to my face and I smelled it. And then I took all of this clothing home. And I was determined to like make these quilts with it and all this stuff. One thing that we did do was we took 40 years of my mother's beautiful scarves that she wore to synagogue. And I made this beautiful kind of prayer shawl, which became the baby naming prayer shawl for my daughter. and it'll become the tallis, the prayer shawl for her bat mitzvah. And in between, I wear it whenever I go to synagogue for very special occasions. And, you know, there's a prayer written in gold on it. And I feel my mother, and it's great. But there were things that I could have given away that would have been really useful to someone else. And I was really kind of selfish. I just couldn't do it. But in retrospect, I think I could have if I did it with my mother. So what I want you to think about is, what if she is in the skirt? What if she is in the Chanel suit? What if she is in that beautiful sweater set that she wore to, you know, her library job as a civil servant, which was what my mother was? And what if you collected a few of the stories of work and labor, the stories that they're most proud of, or the missed opportunities that they never got to have, that they are still upset about, which my mother died really upset that she didn't go to Brooklyn College, which was one of the last things she said to me. So I have this idea that we can partner with an organization like Dress for Success. And if bunches of us all over the country, which I hope to make happen when I tour with these workshops and the film, you know, were to work with our loved ones, or the people that we're caring for, or the people that we're helping and supporting to care for others. And we said, look, choose a couple of pieces of clothing and get this tape recorder and get their story. And then we're going to send this beautiful clothing to either Dress for Success or Our Children in Queens, which is a really wonderful organization that helps returning women citizens who are coming out of prison and back into living with their children and into the workforce. And they have these great thrift shops, and they go and they shop there and they get this clothing. But what if there was a little, you know, recorded voice next to, you know, on a website with that clothing, and you hear someone say, hi, you don't know me, but I'm Florence Helfand, and I am, you know, I that's my red suit. It's my power suit. And no one knew that I had a power suit, but I knew it was powerful. And when I was nervous because I had to ask for a raise, or because I was going to be going to a conference and everyone had gone to college and had gotten their graduate degrees in library science, and I never took the test to go to Brooklyn College, so I didn't have one, but I knew that I knew just as much as they did. And I was doing all the work of a librarian and getting a quarter of the pay. So I would wear that suit to remind myself that I was as good as everybody else. So if you need that suit, you hear me, you step out with your right foot forward and you go and you get them, girl. Now, I know my mother would have said that had I given her the chance to be in the skirt or the red power suit. And I would have been happy to give the power suit away to get that story. And so I'm actively trying to partner with Dress for Success or Our Children and figure out like a QR code thing, or you take a picture and then we put it on a site, and then this audio is there, and that, you know, there's a way to pay it forward, and that there's a way for us to gather the work histories of our loved ones, and it could be men's too. And, you know, cross class, cross race, cross country, cross geography, you know, stories that could really make a difference. So these are 3 different scenarios that I want you to imagine. What would work for you given where you are? That would be really helpful. And there's no lost time. You know, if you didn't get to do it the way you wanted to, maybe you could help somebody do it the way you would have, or maybe there's a way to make the stuff talk now or something. So we were going to make breakout rooms, but I'm not sure that we need to, because we seem like we're a pretty small group. Though we're bigger than we think. I'm just only looking at the people who are on camera.
There's
Andy,
45 of us, Judith.
what's your take? Okay. So,
45 is a lot.
all right. So I want everyone to find a piece of paper And we're gonna give you, it's short, okay? We're gonna give you 5 minutes to find one of those prompts that works for you, right? So is it the thing that you saved that you're going to write that story down because you remember it and you always remember it when you use it, but you want someone else in your family to have that? Is your family member alive and you can use the time with them? Even if they're having memory problems, they're going to know how to cook something, or at least you'll have a good time and they won't remember anything, but at least you'll have fun. And that's a good thing too. You'll remember the fun. Okay. So do you need to downsize and do a stuff review and work through material along the way? Hence, what are those objects that you would love to do? What would you want to do with them? How would you do that? Or what am I missing? Are there 5 things in the house that if you're going to see them for Thanksgiving, or you're going to see some other loved ones, that you can go find, and you could even bring it with you, and it's going to help. Now, my theory for those people that have to have that end of life conversation is, if my mother and my mother did have a DNR and she did tape it to the refrigerator, but if she had not been that lady and I was the one who needed to get there, I think the stuff review would help me get there. Because inevitably it's like, you can't take this with you, but you can give me directives. You could help me. You could direct the stuff. You could direct me where you wanted to go, who you wanted to get. I could help elicit these stories. And along the way, we could talk about the kind of death that you want. So you're not burdened by the stuff, you're liberated and free. And I love what I have, and I'm going to use it and integrate it into my life and not dread it.
Thank you so much.
Have a
Okay.
meaningful and restful holiday.